I'm here today, um, having a great deal of pleasure, celebrating the 50th anniversary of your giving me the degree. When I say yours, of course, I mean Teachers College. And of course, the kind of memories it brings back are really interesting because most of all of this is inside me rather than what I'm looking at. And when the presentation went on today about Lawrence Kremen, of course, I was so impressed with some of the things that he did as a student here, and then talked to him about it. And then he introduced me to other people on the faculty or whatever. The most interesting of which I would think was Margaret Mead, who then became my professor in a class of 8 here at Columbia. She wasn't on the staff officially. She was here teaching basically from Harvard in those years. I'm trying to think of which years. Whatever. In any event, that brought back the memories of how I became interested in art in the first place. In her class, she excited me about the South Pacific, so I decided to go there and find out how they learned about art in the South Pacific. And one of the issues, of course, is not coming from a wealthy background and not being able to afford too much. How do you do this? Well, the professors here taught me how to do this. You write up grants, you get grant money, and you get people basically to sponsor what it is you want to do. So who could be a nicer sponsor than the Rockefeller Institute? It turns out at the time that all I learned here was that Rockefeller's son, David, disappeared in the South Pacific in the Sepik River area. And that then became an interest as, well, what happened to him and what about all the art? To make a very long story short, I went to the South Pacific and went to some of these places in the villages and that Margaret Mead had been to and met people who she had interviewed and talked with them, and then they gave a follow-up, blah, 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 whatever. And of course, as we all know, the really best examples of that art are now in the Metropolitan Museum, in the whole collection and the view that Rockefeller gave to the Metropolitan. Okay, so the memories that this is bringing up is how wonderful it was to meet all of these people who were really the faculty and staff who, in a sense, taught me how to do everything and how to make the connections and then how to follow up on some of the connections that I made. And of course, not all of this was the best advice to become a teacher. I think it was Ziegfeld who told me, well, wait a minute, if you want to teach design, maybe you ought to learn a little bit more about design, and then you teach design after you become a designer. I'm not sure if he's the one that said that, but one of the guys did, so of course I did. Went to Pratt, have a degree from them, and then I discovered other interesting little connections among the faculty. Found the best things to do is make friends with the faculty, which is what I did. Now, my professor at Pratt, who taught me all about design, was Eleanor Pepper. Now I get into sort of the interesting little details because Margaret Mead became one of my idols, as a parent especially, since I was going to become a parent myself, and did. I have a family who I'm very happy with. But then she wasn't exactly the best model for her daughter, who became Ruth Benedict. Then it turns out that Margaret Mead went to many of her places of interest in the South Pacific while she had her daughter Ruth, who was growing up. And it turns out now that my professor at Pratt babysat because she was a friend of Margaret Mead and took care of Margaret's daughter for her. Now I got the whole inside information about Ruth Benedict, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm sort of saying here is the memories that I've got are basically the connections and how to make the connections to visualize your own goals or go where you're going to go with the goals. And I have to give Teachers College credit for that because, hey, this is how you learn how to do this stuff.